I'll go tally the votes. I need you to bring me your torch. This is where we learn who is the ultimate survivor. I'll read the votes.
Hello, everyone. Today, Ollie, Phil, and myself have got something for you. We are talking about episode 12 of Survivor 45. Things start out on a pretty interesting note because we just got back from a tribal council where there was a failed blindside attempt against Julie. We all know how that went down. And now we have Dee who's running around giving the performance of a lifetime. And I really loved this moment, especially when Drew was basically saying like, oh, we're all a bunch of bad actors. How could Julie possibly know that there was that she was going to need to play her idol? And little do they know, it was all Dee all along. Phil, did you enjoy this opening intro that we got from the episode? Did it draw you right in?
Oh, it drew me right in. And I feel like this was such a great episode overall. I'm excited to talk about it. There's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of fun moments. So this is going to be a blast.
So much good things to talk about. I think I want to start again and have a broader conversation about Dee and the role that she sort of played in this moment here. So we know that Dee told Julie, you are going to have to play your idol. And now we have this like interesting conversation where Austin's like, Dee, they're going to think it was you who did it. And Dee's like, oh, this is terrible. And I think she's doing a really good job here. I mean, Ollie, I would be convinced that Dee was telling me the truth in this moment if I was in Austin's position as well. What did you think of this gameplay?
I mean, I thought this was so masterful. It was the brilliance of, because she literally even thought of the fact that, right, if I vote with Julie, they're already gonna know that I told her. So if I'm sat there and I vote like as she did, and she voted with everyone, she can then kind of sit there and be like, I mean, why would I have told her and then voted? Hi again. So I was just like, to me, it was so clever. And yeah, the acting was Oscar worthy, in my opinion. It was Oscar.
I think one of her biggest selling points was that she kept reiterating, she was like, oh, Julie's going to be so mad at me. Julie's going to be so pissed at me. And I feel like that, obviously, with us as the audience, knowing good and well that Julie is elated with Dee, especially as an ally, considering she gave her the heads up there, was just, I think that really sold it, hook, line, and sinker. Like, how can you look at someone being like, I'm nervous, they're going to be mad at me because I voted for them. And, when Drew walks over and asks and goes, did you tell her? She goes, no, I'm nervous she's going to be mad at me. I think that's just like such masterful sort of, cause and effect, storytelling there. I mean, lying is another word, but, storytelling.
True. Well, also, it's the fact that obviously we talk about how Dee saying that Julie's going to be so mad at her. Dee even told Julie prior, I'm going to vote for you, play your idol, and then be really upset with me that like Dee voted for you. Like it's that whole thing of Dee has done a wonderful job at crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, making sure any loose thread is cut so that now this happens. The only way people can figure out it was her is if Julie says anything or if Dee just admits it at that point.
I agree. And it's like the right amount of risk that Dee had to take here that I think would set her up really well in a final tribal council when she has to explain her game. But Phil, I saw you had a point to what Ollie said.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask you two, if we can theorize here, what do you think that they actually believe happened? Because obviously we have the sort of full picture, and they asked Dee, they said, hey, are you sure that you did not sort of tip her off? And she goes, no, I swear I didn't. Where do you think that they are landing? And I'm talking Austin and Drew here. Where do you think that they are landing that is giving them the peace of mind where they're like, okay, well, it's not Dee. So where do you think that they landed?
Matthew?
I think that they just thought that they experienced a Wentworth blindside attempt moment where they went and had this plan and it was going to be unanimous. And maybe they just thought we didn't hide our tracks well enough, and somehow Julie got the right idea and played the idol. I think that's the only thing that would come to my mind. Let's say I was aligned with Dee and I believed her in the fact that she didn't let it slide. There are so many different cues that I would be thinking about, like, oh, it must have been the time when I saw so-and-so talking to Julie and it seemed like she was catching on. Like, you can kind of start filling in the gaps. But I'm curious to hear what you two think as well. Do they need a solid reason of, like, do they need to be able to point to something and say, that is what happened, that is what tipped Julie off?
I think it's always for, like, you want that for your own peace of mind. And I feel like that's what Drew and Austin want. They just want to kind of have a pinpoint to go like, okay, that's where it is. It's fine. But at this point, the only thing you can kind of go off was, were we just making it a little bit too obvious? Did we kind of distance Julie too much? Like, that's the only thing, like, they could go off at that point is, did everyone kind of just give Julie the cold shoulder so much that she was like, okay, it's clear I'm the one going?
So they might have landed on that they tipped it off themselves with their sort of behavior towards Julie. That's really interesting. I think that is probably, over here to Ali, I think that is probably the most likely answer as well. But I agree with you, Ali. I mean, you're sort of repeating what I'm like. They need to have something that's giving them peace of mind, where they're like, this is the reason why this happened. Otherwise, like, I feel like we go crazy out there where it's like, how did she know this? You know, and of course there's a little bit that's just like, oh, maybe she got lucky. But I just wanted to sort of pose that question at the start because that's how we started the episode. They're on in the investigation. They're trying to figure out how Julie figured this out, and it really seems to bother Drew.
Oh God, Drew is pressed.
But Drew also seems like the type of player who needs to know everything. And I think this sense of being out of control of that moment, I think it really bothered him. And we see it play out throughout the rest of this episode. And what we also see is, I think, Austin's realization at the final moments at the end of the episode as to what's really going on. So we wake up the next morning and Katurah wakes up first and is like, I got to go try to find the idol. Julie played it. It means it's here. But of course, she also sort of gets caught by Austin and Dee, who notice that she's away from camp. But I like that Katurah sort of included them in the idol hunt. Like, she mentioned to Austin, like, Julie played it. That means it's out here. We got to find it before she does.
Yeah, I think that's kind of showcasing Katurah's kind of social game to be like, okay, I'm just going to include you because at this point, there's not that many people. If I can just show you this little inkling of trust and like grace, you might help me out. And it was interesting for her because she mentioned when she was idol hunting, she wanted to showcase an evolution like of her game. And I do feel like we're seeing that anyway. I feel like she's just worried now that she has to make a big move. And I feel like that's hopefully where we don't see her stumble. But I mean, we didn't this time. We just saw her get spooked by Austin.
I mean, yeah, it's I feel like that's got to be your go-to when you get caught searching for an idol. Is like, oh yeah, that's what we're doing. We got to get it before she does, or before he does, or they do. You know, I think that has to sort of be your first defense, and I do think that Katurah did an all right job with that. I mean, look, Austin still ended up bringing her on the reward, which once again we'll get to. Poor Drew. This was truly a let's bury Drew sort of storyline to this episode. But for all of the overinflated confessionals to get here, I think that it's not too bad. It's not too bad, truly.
Yeah, I feel like the thing I heard the most this episode were other people commenting on Drew being like, oh, he's upset. Oh, he's mad. Like, and it happened like several times throughout this episode. But we hear a little bit more insight into how like Julie's feeling, right? Just coming off the last tribal council. She and Drew have the like odd conversation about like, so we're still Reba 4, right? Like, we're still Reba 4 to the end. Drew's like, yeah, absolutely. Jake is next to go. And do we think Julie believes Drew? We know what happens at the end, so probably not.
No.
Absolutely not. Not even in the slightest. Mr. Matthew, I'm the fake.
Good.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why. And I think that it's really interesting because I feel like we see Survivor sort of get in this realm like kind of regularly through seasons where two people who absolutely don't trust each other are still keeping up the charade in the act as though they still believe in one another, even though they both don't. And it's just really, really interesting to sort of hear the confessionals where, we see, Julie sort of go on them, dive on them and say, oh, remember what was. And Drew is visibly annoyed by her and is literally damn near pushing her off. But at the same time, you sit there and you're like, Julie's not fooled. Julie does not believe that this is Act of 4. Julie knows that this is broken. She is playing her part in this sort of, acted out scenario. So it's really, really funny to see them both comment on one another where I think they both think that they have the edge on the next person. But they're both acting. This is one giant play at this point. What do you think, Ollie?
I mean, the thing that really interested me or kind of intrigued me the most was kind of just Drew's reactions in general, because it was almost like he has just gone, like, it's just a complete 180 from what we've seen like 2 episodes ago. Like, he is now like, Julie is like this, not rancid person, but like this person.
Yes.
Like, it's that turn. And I'm like, she was like your mum 2 episodes ago, and now all of a sudden she is someone that you don't like, you don't get along with, you don't like. And I'm like, this is where it confuses me with you. And this is where because I've always kind of said, like, during the season, that Drew is very much, they're pawns rather than people. And I feel like it's these reactions that make me kind of see that more, because you don't just turn on someone that quickly. Like, at the end of the day, if I'm going to decide that I'm going to go against Phil, I'm not going to suddenly hate him and have all this rage towards him because he's gone. I'm just going to be like, oh, the person I wanted didn't go. I'm still going to be civil, but my goal is to get rid of them. But it was almost like this rage. And I was like, true. Is it malnourishment? Is it like 22 days of like no food? I don't know.
I mean, that can play into it, but I'm so happy you brought that up because I was feeling the exact same thing watching the episode. And to me, it came across more so as he was so disappointed that his plan was foiled.
Yeah.
Because of Julie. So he thinks.
I got that as well, where he says it himself. He says, seeing Julie walk around camp is so frustrating to him because in his mind, it is a reminder of his failure, of his failed plan. And look, when you are an Ivy student, when you are someone who is used to succeeding, used to things working out in the expected and intended result, when it doesn't happen, like, you almost want to shove it in a closet and hide it and go, oh, I didn't mess up here, whatever. But you did, and you got bested by Julie, and who's the oldest cast member at that. And it's I think that he's a little bit embarrassed, and he is upset with himself. And it doesn't look very good on him. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I also just want to finish up by saying I feel like from a game perspective, it's showing his kind of weakness, which to me is adaptability. Because now we're going to see this, like, all he wants to do is just go for Julie because that is his plan. He's like, nope, nothing else can go on until Julie goes.
I think it's also interesting, too, to look at Jake as well as sort of a comparison to something similar. Remember that moment a couple of episodes ago where Jake had, and it comes up again in this episode, which I think is why we should also talk about it. Jake had that plan to blindside Julie. Whoa. Look at this comparison. Jake had a plan to blindside Julie, which included Caleb and Katurah with the hopes of them voting with him to force a tie. And what ended up happening was, of course, his plan failed and he sort of had to enter in. And I think Jake actually did a better job at adapting here than Drew did when it came to the failed plan experienced by both of them at different times. We have Georgette here in the comments. Georgette, always good to see you. Welcome to the, we're glad you were able to catch it. Not a big Julie fan. Georgette, so interested to hear your opinion as well on that too. I'm a fan of Julie. I would like to see Julie do well. And I do like her interactions especially with Dee. I like that relationship a lot. Plus Julie's on my draft team, so I have to be a little bit biased here.
Sorry, you've got 2 people here that have stopped caring about the draft.
Yes,
so.
true.
I don't even know what you're talking about, Matthew.
I'm just going to say now, when it comes to bracketology, I'm winning the draft out of the analysts. I'm on like 700 points, loving my life there. So that's the draft that matters to me.
Phil, are you involved in the bracketology fantasy league as well?
I am actually not. I am only in our little Survivor Now podcast draft, and that has been abysmal for me. I don't really love talking about it. I'm kind of split on Julie. It's interesting to hear your take, Georgette, and no pressure, but I would love to hear your reasoning behind that, because I actually think that Julie is of an archetype that I typically am not that big of a fan of, and I really don't care too much about, which is just sort of like the older, mother figure. And Julie has sort of flipped that for me. I think that Julie is one of the first characters of that archetype that I find myself continuously checking in with. I find myself interested in her narrative because I think that she's like a badass version of that archetype, to be completely honest. And I think that she just does a really great job of feeling as though she's standing on her own and not just leaning on everyone else to, get her to the end. And I really commend her for that. It cannot be easy.
Yeah, I agree. I like that she's kind of flipped the archetype on its head. I think the thing that struggles me sometimes with Julie, and I kind of agree with Georgette's opinion, is when she almost has this thing of when someone votes for her, and it's similar to D. It's the one kind of thing with D. Sometimes I'm like, come on, babes. It's when it's like they target and it's tunnel vision and it's I want to go for no one else but you. Kind of similar with Drew, and we kind of obviously I've just mentioned about 3 people now, so we're kind of that's what we've seen this season. But yeah, Julie, it was like I just want to go for Jake. I just want to go for Jake. He voted me, and that was the same. Drew targeted me. I want Drew, and it's like look at the big picture. The bigger picture's right here.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, for every season of Survivor, you can sort of start to get into like, what is the theme of this season? How are they deciding to vote people off? And like, it's been talked about in the past how, it's been talked about in the past how certain seasons where it's like someone makes a big move and that person ends up being enemy number 1 for everybody. And it does not matter where you stood. If Ollie made the last big move, we got to vote off Ollie immediately. In this season, actually doesn't seem to be like that as much as it is to your point, Ollie. It's, he said my name. I have to go for them, and I cannot go for anyone else until they're out. It's very fascinating to sort of see what like agreed upon contract each sort of merge tribe decides. It really feels like a contract because everyone is playing by those rules. You know what I mean? Dee did it. Drew did it. Julie did it. It's really, really interesting. And I think that one of the more mild players in Austin, well, he doesn't do that. I think that might be his fault, where I don't think people really see him as a jury threat in the end. I mean, I surely don't, if I'm being completely honest. And it's strange because he's had so much agency and power to a certain extent, but he has not flexed in the same manner that, Dee has, where it's, they put out my name, I'm going after them. That person goes home. That was Dee's move. What do y'all? I mean, it's
Phil. I totally agree with you on this. Austin has sort of fallen out of my line of sight for who I see as a potential
winner,
a potential jury threat. Like someone who at the end who can be able to confidently share their moves and paint them as the winner of the season. But we do see Austin, who does really well in challenges still. And we have that reward challenge, which the winner of that will win a lovely picnic, a trip to a sand spit in the middle of the ocean. And guess what, Ollie? I think I already know why you're applauding. We get a helicopter ride that is to somewhere.
It's not the sanctuary.
It's not the sanctuary. The Lord. Where look, good things happen in a helicopter too. Would you believe it? Would you believe it? Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I mean, good things did happen in this helicopter. Because
imagine that's the reward. We are going to send you in an elevator.
On an elevator.
It's going to be a blast. You guys haven't seen an elevator in like 20 days. Oh my gosh!
I would be thrilled for that. A nice view of the island, gorgeous. But the helicopter is, I mean, it's all right too.
Yeah.
But we do see what I love from this was seeing more about the relationship between Dee and Austin. I mean, we know at this point there's not much to say about the challenge itself, but Austin ends up winning the reward and picks Dee like almost instantly. Like Dee, you're coming on the expected, and then also picks Katurah to join as well. And Katurah is so funny. And I loved the moment where she talked about watching the two of them get closer on the helicopter and realizing that she was the third wheel. I laugh every time. I rewatched the episode before we went live, and it was so funny.
I think that's no, you go.
I was just gonna say, I mean, Katurah has really become like a fabulous character for me. I mean, look, if I'm being like, I mean, look, this is the episode before the finale. I think that I can just sort of put out my thoughts and feelings here. I personally do not see Katurah as a huge winner threat. However, I have enjoyed getting to know her through the season, and that's not exactly true for every single contestant that I don't see as a winner as a winner threat. And I think that it's the 90 minutes, the extra breathing room definitely helps with that. But
yes,
you're right. I completely agree. When Katurah was on the flight and she goes, I see them. They've got hands on thighs. They're holding hands. Like, I'm starting to realize I'm the third wheel. That was so funny, and it pointed to her character. It was great.
It made you like love her even more. And again, I kind of want to disagree with your point slightly, but
Please.
in the sense of I feel like we really have started to see them really kind of point the finger slightly towards Katurah, as in like, here's the obvious person that right now we could get the winner edit, but I feel like they're kind of going, just remember Katurah, remember she's right there, and I feel like that's what they're doing with her. So if she wins, it's kind of always, it will be that case of, we always kind of did just see her a little bit. She was always kind of had an opinion, and she always had a storyline. And that's what I think it is. Even if it was her rivalry, there we go, with Bruce. After that, it then kind of turned into, okay, here's the personal side of Katurah. Okay, here's her wanting to evolve her game, and we see that. So that's what I'm interested to see with her.
I mean, look,
totally.
we look at our final five. There is no one in our final five that we know less than we knew Erica in 41. Let's be honest. So, I think that you're absolutely right, Ollie. Like as much as I'm sort of saying, my sort of thoughts and feelings on her winning potential, anyone can still win at this point. I think that's what's really, really great about the sort of like new direction of the editing this season. I really, really, really dig it.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. When I was watching 44, when we got to the final five, it really, to me, felt like there were only a certain number of players that I could see winning the game based on how the season was done. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that one of those people was undeserving of it. I think any of them could have won, but from the actual edits of the episode, how the story was being told, it felt like it was headed in the direction it ended up heading in. So I'm curious to know, like, for me, these 90-minute episodes, the way they've decided to spread out the storytelling amongst the players, especially as we get down to these smaller group of numbers, it feels so refreshing and wonderful to me as a viewer. Because to your point, Phil, I feel like anyone could walk away with the win, and I would still feel satisfied based on what I've seen from each player at this point.
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job at giving everyone the potential. And I think that's the key word I want to say, the potential to win. And it's kind of like, if you see them next week win, you go, okay, here's the path they took. Here's the way they got that. And that's what I like. And that's what I appreciate. Because again, like you said, with 44, I'll just say it, it was basically going to be one of the Tika 3. And I remember I was rooting for Lauren. So I was sat there. I just want Lauren to win just because of the edit. But what were you going to say, Phil?
Well, I was just going to say, and look, no shade to the editors. They do a great job every single season. But at the same time, it's like, how much, I mean, it's just the truth. Like, how much easier is it to sort of follow three people, the Tika 3, all the way through and watch that versus, I feel like this season, the players that we're highlighting were honestly a little bit more disjointed, and they're finding a way to track all of their stories regardless. And that it is more difficult. You know, the fact that like Katurah is sort of on her own island, Jake is on his own island. Sure, the Raven 4 are together and we're able to sort of track that. But even that, they're starting to sort of scatter and we're understanding why. And I think that is just, it's fantastic. I've really been enjoying this season. I mean, I really have. And I'm sorry I had to miss last week. Y'all will probably see I'm in a slightly new environment here. I'm visiting family, but I was like, I need to get on for this week. I'm very excited to talk about this season. It's been a really great season.
Yeah, we missed you last week. And the other thing I want to touch on while we're just kind of talking about this bigger picture thing of Survivor is that it seems like from what I've seen and heard from a couple of people in the fandom that some people are underwhelmed by the gameplay that's happening in this post-merge part. And I can see where there is disappointment there. I can understand that. The thing for me personally as a viewer is I feel like there has been so much work set up in the pre-merge episodes to make me feel for these characters and for these castaways, for the remaining players on my screen, that I'm sort of, I don't want to say I'm okay with the sort of like less strategic moment. I think that there have been some questionable decisions here, but I'm still drawn to my screen every week because I have been following them from the beginning and I want to see how it plays out and I'm eager to watch each episode.
Absolutely.
Do you two feel the same way, or do you just feel like,
yeah?
That's
the thing. I agree. I agree.
I did not mean to ice you out there, Matt. I was sitting there. I was like, let's let Ollie get in. No. I absolutely agree with you, and I think like to that point, right? I think even contestants that we are not the biggest fans of, and I'll speak for myself here. Like I was a fan of Drew, but I know that a lot of people weren't. And that's the thing. I think that whether you're watching, their demise or not, whether you enjoy a contestant or not, I know a lot of people didn't like Bruce. I was a fan of Bruce, and I don't know. It's giving us reason to check back. I like checking in with these contestants, whether I'm a huge fan of them or not. And I think that is a really good mark on the storytelling. Like I said, the truth is, I was not huge on Katurah at the start. I was like, oh my god, her only storyline is that she doesn't like Bruce. I am now like truly invested in what happens to her in this game. And I think they found a way to make you invest in everyone's story, even if you are not a fan of them as a character, as a contestant. And I think that is important.
Love it, Phil. Love it. And we, when we get back into this episode, I mean, something that I was really happy to see is, again, no one has stopped playing the game, which I really appreciate. And we see Jake, who is like, I'm still very much on the outs. And he decides to go looking for the idol. He has a very interesting strategy where he strips down to his underwear for a reason. And then he finds it. I guess you got to do what you got to do. And he ends up finding the idol. So I'm curious to see how this plays into the finale episode, knowing that he has it. I mean, he can only play it at the next tribal, right? And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, after that, it's Final Four.
I can't believe we're here already. That's so incredible to me. Was it funny for you two to also see Drew take on the babysitter role?
Yes. Oh, the both of them actually, both Drew and Jake, because I think it was so funny because I think Drew was, I mean, we'll get that out of the way. Drew was obviously annoyed, and like obviously Drew was like, I've got a babysitter, I've got to do this, and it was like, that's fine. It was Jake's response going, I don't care.
Yeah.
Do you know what? But this is the thing again, and this is why I kind of make the comparisons, because Jake was sat there going, do you know what? I haven't been like, me and Julie have not been on the same wavelength, but I'm not going to babysit her. Julie, do you want to come idol hunting? Let's go. And I felt like that was such a testament to his adaptability, because he's gone like, we've not got there's no one here. Let's just go for it. So I that's the part I enjoyed. He was like, no, I'm not going to babysit, but if she can benefit me, come on.
I thought this was a super fun scene. Ooh, what is this? What do we got? Hey, Georgette.
If Jake rallies Julie and Katurah, they can get rid of Dee or Austin. Phil, what do you think?
Jake rallies Julie and Katurah, they can get rid of Dee or Austin. I mean, that's absolutely true. They're at 5 now, and that's what happens. I mean, now that this sort of pact of 4 has broken open, there really are a lot of different ways that this can sort of ebb and flow. And I do think that it is actually very likely that Jake can sort of rally Julie and Katurah, pardon me. And he has an idol on top, so he's not going home. I think that Jake, and this is so crazy. I mean, look, y'all know where I've been saying. I have been saying for weeks, hey, Jake can win this game. And I'll be honest, about 2 weeks ago, I flipped back and I said, guys, I don't think Jake can win this game. But I think that after finding this idol, it's looking more and more like he can. And I hate to be a flip-flopper. I don't know. This was years ago. Old school Survivor at this point. He was never win. But let me flip-flopping, and I'm back on the Jake train. I feel like he can do something, which is insane to say of someone who has had the sort of path that he has.
Yeah, I mean, Phil, you're not alone in this thinking. Both of you know, I've also been saying I see a potential Jake win at the end of the season. And then you're right, Phil, for the past couple of weeks, I'd be like, oh no, like what did I not see with the edit? The thing is that's also interesting. And I think we can talk more about this when Jake kind of comes up with the exact same plan that he wanted to do when he wanted to blindside Julie, but instead he wants a redemption this time by forcing the tie again at this next tribal council that we're about to talk about. In one of the podcasts, do you both of you remember that thing that happened in the episode where Jake outlined his plan and they flashed forward to tribal council and they showed the votes on the podcast, the one that the show actually does, one
On
of the
Fire
official ones. On Fire. They
yes.
talked about I don't know if that's the title anymore because I think it's just On Fire now. Yeah. Because they have like the players talking about it. Anyway, they talked about how that edit, they wanted to do that editing choice, and it sounded like there was going to be another editing choice that is as unique as that one. They said one of a future episodes, but now it seems like it's going to happen in the finale. And I wonder if because that editing choice happened with Jake's plan, if that's going to be an editing choice that happens with another one of Jake's plan in this final episode. Or get what I'm putting out there? Like, I feel like there might be something in the works in terms of something that Jake comes up with. I mean, I want to talk about the plan a little bit later when we get there, but I don't know why he wanted to force a tie at this point. He didn't have to, but he didn't know that.
Well, I think it was the same reason as. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
I was just gonna say. I feel like because he kind of outlined it, it was the same reasons to me as it was the same reasons as before. It was to spook Austin. So it's kind of like he's just kind of recycled. To me, he's recycled that plan to be like maybe it can work this time. You've mentioned the editing choice. I'm just trying to. You'll see me going like this. I'm going back in my head. Because I swear there was a moment that I watched we watched something editing and I was like, that was weird. That was different for the show. We'd seen it before, like in between that. And I'm just trying to think back to that.
Oh, do you think that was the one they were talking about then?
Possibly.
If you think about it, let me know.
I'll try and remember.
Well, why don't we take a very quick break? And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the immunity challenge and all that unfolds out of it.
What's up, guys? I'm Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China, and I want to welcome you to Todd's Pop Shop. Here, me and my husband Jess, we custom make Funko Pops. We'll make literally anybody or anything you could imagine. But being that we're here listening to the Survivor Now podcast, I'm assuming you're all Survivor fans. So take a look at these. Some custom Funkos of your favorite Survivor winners, Sandra and Yul. Or how about Big Brother fans? Suri Goddess herself playing the game of Big Brother. You can also get her in Survivor form. Or maybe yourself with your favorite buff and a torch, playing the game. But even better, get yourself with your favorite player like Nora here with Ozzy. And since you're listening to the Survivor Now podcast, if you mention this ad, you will get $10 off your first order and free shipping. All season long, Survivor 45 should be a good one. Mention this ad, $10 off and free shipping. I'll be watching too, still a diehard fan to this day. Hit me up on Instagram, Todd's Pop Shop, or toddspopshop@gmail.com or on Facebook. And I will see you soon.
Ollie, did this challenge look familiar to you?
Yes, it did.
What was the name of this on Survivor UK? You're the keeper of the names, Ollie.
I'm trying to remember it. Hold on.
Okay. Anyway, they did this
Thank
challenge
God.
on Survivor UK. It was the first individual immunity challenge on that season. Ollie and I just finished our final recap of the season earlier today. So you can actually go check out that video if you want to be caught up with all things Survivor. But yes, they did this challenge. Basically, you have to balance a ball on a plank using one leg. So it's a big balance challenge, which is a lot of fun. Balance and core, I would say.
Yes.
And Dee ends up winning immunity.
We love. Well, I know that actually it was slightly different to the UK one because obviously the UK one had a vase and this one had the. But I thought it was. I did think it was interesting though because the one thing that I enjoyed was Dee's smack talk. I thought it was hilarious.
I thought that was so funny, and it really pointed to those two sort of camaraderie. The Austin Dee, two top competitors, you know, both very attractive people talking about, you know, giving smack talk on the challenge. I thought really fun, really fun.
Yeah, it was great to watch. It was entertaining. It was cool to see. It really built in terms of the challenge. I think Dee won, which was amazing. And then we go back to camp. I forgot to mention it when we talked about Jake finding the idol. Oh, yes, Ollie, before we move on.
A leg up.
A leg up was the name of the challenge on Survivor UK. It applies here as well. But I just want to know about the quote that Jake said that when he found the idol, he said that I'm a wolf in goat's clothing. I really like that line. Did either of you catch that? It's just a good line.
And I want to make it very clear. This is not the first time he said that. That has been a Matthew, that has been a statement that he has said before, and he's repeated that a few times. And I think it's really interesting. Very similar to sort of, honestly, I think about Gabler. Gabler had a catchphrase that was catchy, that was true to his story, that he was able to sort of bring to that final tribal. And I think that this is Jake's. I think that Jake's sort of story here is, hey, I may look like a goat. Bring me to the end. It will be your demise. I will show you that I'm a wolf. And I think that it is really interesting.
You've heard it here first. Phil is locking in Jake as his winner pick.
Okay, look. I definitely want to. I've been very close to doing it. Maybe into the podcast we'll throw some names out.
I think that's a good idea. It's funny to also see. I laughed at this. Like, this was also a funny when we talk about Katurah and Dee also, but starting with Jake, because then it leads to them, pitches the blind side of Drew to Julie. And again, here's where we get into Jake's plan. We're going to force a tie. We don't need to tell Dee about this. It's going to ruin things. Julie is over here basically in her confessional saying Dee would be on board with this plan. And then Jake also fills Katurah in about the plan and is like, hey, we're voting Drew out. Don't tell Dee. And then instantly we cut straight to Katurah and Dee. I love it. It was so good where they did the countdown and then they just both said Drew at the same time. That made me so happy. I really enjoyed that moment. It was just fun.
It was so funny just because it was like, it was Jake kind of being like, I've got this. No one else. How can anyone else think? Boop. 3, 2, 1. Drew. I'm like,
Can I ask? What do we think about this? Do we think that was like thrown in to show that like part 18, however many times of Jake feeling like he has this giant master plan, and the truth is it's not really all his plan. Like I'm wondering why they're doing that, to be honest. Well, what's your thought, Ollie?
I think it's because, and I know you two have been on the Jake train. I think what it is because it's almost like Jake has this, thinks that this is going to be fair. Like, I'm going to be able to say all of this and it's going to get thing. And it's always kind of been a thing of, okay, but here's what this person will then be able to say to counteract it. It's always been like when it comes to Jake having these masterful ideas, it's always been something is then cut to, here's the counterpoint, here's the thing. And that's where I feel like it's coming with Jake. And it could be a thing of, and again, we all know we make these predictions and they go way off. It from the storytelling aspect, it looks like it would be a thing of Jake gets to the end, and say he gets to the end with Katurah and Dee. Jake has all these things that he's trying to put down on his resume, but then you have Dee and Katurah just counteracting it, and it's like Jake can't do anything about it, and that's where it comes across for me, especially that cut in the scene with both Katurah and Dee going 3, 2, 1, Drew, because I feel like Jake would go around and be like, Drew was my move, I wanted to go for Drew, and then both of them sit there and go, we wanted to go for Drew way before you pitched it, babe. You just happened to allow us, you just gave us confirmation that we had the votes. Like, that's what it kind of is, that to me anyway.
That is what it felt like to me also. It felt like Jake would say his plan, what he thought he could make happen, and then the edit sort of undermines it by showing that it was sort of already in the works amongst other players. So when we talk about this, I mean, like, this instantly, I'm glad the question was brought up, because it made me think, okay, if Jake ends up in the final 3, how is he going to frame this as this was his move if he still feels that way after that? And like, I wonder, because the votes did not tie at the end of this episode, I wonder how he really feels about the move to blindside Drew. Like, will he still feel like he was fully in control of that? Or will he kind of connect the dots and realize, it seems like other people were talking that I wasn't aware of?
Well, that's sort of my thing. Again, they're showing Jake throw out this tie vote, mastermindy sort of plan, and then it doesn't happen. Part 2, and it's like, what are we to think about this man? Are we supposed to have faith in him? Are we supposed to think he's this big dummy? Is he the Owen? Because I don't think that he's getting the same edit as Owen.
No.
I think I think Owen felt truly more Charlie Brownish than Jake does. Jake, I don't know. He feels more inspired every single time that he speaks about what he's even trying to do. It's just, it honestly is rather confusing. I am sitting back and I'm like, what do they want us to think about this man?
No, that's true. I'm totally with you there, Phil. Especially because, like, I'm engaged, you know, like I'm intrigued by the story. I'm intrigued by Jake as a player in the game. And I kind of like the idea that we have this player who sees these opportunities when so much is happening around them. That sort of like, how do I explain it? I like, there's something that's on the tip of my tongue, how I want to frame this, but it's like, he's sort of involved and not involved at the exact same time with everything. And that's funny. And you're right. It's part 2 of the plan that he put into his mind not working so much. It had the same outcome, but we got there in a completely different way. But I also I think this is what I meant to say. I like the fact that Jake's story throughout this whole season, whether it warrants him the win or not, was the fact that he really stumbled. Like, he was great strategically and also, I think, socially at the early parts of the game. And then when it was time to turn up the flame a little bit, he accidentally fell backwards, pretty significantly, and is still trying to maneuver his way back to where he was. So it's a very interesting edit. Ollie, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add in terms of Jake.
No, I think it's in that sense of kind of, with what you said, it's like, right now, Jake is kind of in his underdog story, if we were to put it that way. Again, strategically and socially, he was in a really good position. And then the breakdown of Belo happened. And then Jake became sort of this underdog who kept constantly having to persevere. So there is where you could kind of give him the credit. But I think, again, I think it will depend on how this end game shakes up. And if he gets to the end, if he can showcase kind of how he was able to let everything be a benefit to him. But yeah,
That's
all.
the other thing is I can't tell. I'm sorry, Phil. I based on what Ollie said, I can't tell how Jake could frame his final jury pitch that would beat players like D, like at the end of it. And that's just based on what I've seen in these last couple of episodes.
Yeah, it's tough. And I feel like it all comes down to sort of what you feel the philosophy of Survivor rewards. And obviously what's great about the game is that every season feels like it sort of mixes and matches and it changes based on the people that you're playing with.
Yeah.
But I sit back and I go, is this going to be a season where they go, hey, who had the most control this whole entire game? Who was moving and shaking the best? Who was having like earnest, like true, sort of flows of power that have, dictated the direction of the game, the way that the game was going to move and shake? Or is it going to be, hey, who do we like? Because I feel like if it's the latter, I think that is the story of Jake. I think Jake is a quite well-liked guy who can never say that he gave up, and that is inspiring in itself. But is that going to edge him out and get him the win? That's the tough part. I'm thinking, and I'm like, man, are they going to hear D say, hey, everyone that I wanted out left? Or are they going to listen to Jake say, hey, I tried and tried and tried, and look, I'm still standing here? So
I think it depends. No, you're fine. I think it depends on the jury, as we've said. The thing about Survivor is there is no set plan. It completely depends on the players and how they see, like how the jury see the game. I can attest to that, I think, in the sense of, because we saw a couple of tribals ago when Jake was kind of just sat there, like really couldn't speak, was really stumbling with his words and kind of was truly at rock bottom. And you saw the jury sympathize with him. I remember seeing Kendra and Kelly were sat there going, I feel so bad for him. You'll have
your heart.
Yeah. You'll have Caleb being like, so it's that thing of there's his possible end, because you'll see that the jury were rooting for him. But then again, it will all depend on, is it just the fact they were rooting for him? Is that enough? Or is it, okay, we actually have to take into account, yes, we were rooting for you, but these people were the reasons you got there. That's the test for Jake and the jury.
We'll see. And the other player that we did just briefly mention in this sort of hypothetical scenario was D. And we have this almost completely reversed situation, whereas last episode, it was Austin struggling with, do I tell D about the blind side of Julie that's in the works? Now we have the flip of that, which is D saying, do I fill in Austin about the blind side of Drew that's in the works? And I like that we got the emphasis on the emotional element of the game, but also the legitimate strategy that you need in order to win. Because at the end of the day, they are still playing a game. And it was great to see D really recognize that.
I think D had a really good logical moment here, because, again, it was like last episode, I was sat there and I was like, Austin, don't say anything. And he did. And I was like, see what happens? And again, I think D recognized, well, we saw what happened when Austin told me. I went and told Julie. So here's the thing. Austin has that idol, and Austin has that power to be like, no, if I truly don't want Drew if I don't want Drew to leave, I will play it. So I think that's where she kind of put logic at the forefront and remembered, this is a game I have to win. So kudos to her.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I liked seeing that it was kind of cool to experience this all again from Dee's perspective this time. So that was really fun. Now I do have to ask, are Austin and Drew JT and Steven?
No. The Walmart version.
I mean, yeah. I mean, how can they be? How can they be? It's hard to see them as a true JT and Steven if they're not making it. If they're not both making it to the end. Watch the demise of our dear friend Drew, or at least me and Matthew's dear friend Drew, Ollie's mortal enemy. And he didn't make it to the end, and it's tough to see them as the true JT, or even as an imitation JT and Steven if they don't make it to the end. It's tough.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but I found the comparison to be funny in the context of the episode, with us especially knowing what was happening. And I mean, I think the edit this episode really, it was like Drew has always sort of had the mentality of comparing himself to players of the past, sort of seeing himself. I mean, he flat out said in his opening interviews, I'm the smartest person to ever. Basically, I don't want to misquote because like that could go different ways, but he basically said like, I'm a very smart person playing this game. And he sort of has had that borderline like cocky edit. And I'm sure at times it was straight up that. So I think it was cool to sort of, I mean, it was good storytelling in the sense that it sort of played into that a little bit more, especially when he name drops like Steven and JT. I think he mentioned a few other players as well. But we all knew what was coming, which was Tribal Council. In the moment when Austin got up to play his amulet, I actually forgot about it at the beginning. I know he mentioned it at the beginning of the episode, and I know Dee sort of mentioned it a little bit as well in figuring out if she wanted to tell him or not. But I forgot that he was going to play it. So I thought there was a chance that he might play it on Drew. And I think that was intentional on the editor and producer's part of it. But yeah, Ollie.
So I have this is just a hot take of mine. I think if Austin wasn't going to play his amulet on Drew, he shouldn't have played it. And my thing is, it was something he could have used at Final Tribal Council, because we've seen it before. You know what I'm talking? Like, the thing is, he was like, he could have used that to say like, here was my social like game. I had an amulet, and I didn't have to use it. So if people are sat there going, how were you able to keep yourself safe? He can then say, I used my social connections. I ensured that I was safe to then still have this amulet right now in my hand at Final Tribal Council, not having to play it. Because I think it was it Marianne?
Marianne did it. Yep, Dean did it in 39. I think that I think that's honestly, I don't think that that's that hot. I think that is like a really sentient take. That, I mean, look, when you look at someone who I don't think on the strategy side, he was, carrying, a bunch of strategy on his back. I do think that his like best argument is, you guys were never even looking at me to vote off, ever. And evidence of that, here's an idol, never had to use it. Oh, that idol that Julie used, yeah, that was mine. I gave it to her because I knew that I never even needed it. I never did the second one. It is a great argument when that is the truth. And especially when you can also sit there and be like, and I was winning challenges. I was friends with everyone. I mean, I agree with you, Ollie. I think that would have been a really nice sort of added, footnote to him possibly winning this game. And I don't think he has it anymore. So it's tough.
Phil, I really appreciated your approach, especially as how, if you were in that situation, hearing how you would argue with the move to give Julie one of the idols. I didn't even consider how that might look, because as a viewer, it looked like it was just out of fear, spur of the moment, just in case the twist is only 3 people are at risk to get votes at Tribal Council. But to play it up and to be able to sit at the final 3 and say, I had 2 idols, I didn't need any of them. I didn't need to play either of them. But it also did get me thinking about, was it Xander in 41 who brought an idol all the way to Final Tribal Council as well? And that was actually seen as a detriment, I think, to Xander's game. So I think it's hit or miss depending on the idols, because some people could see that and say, you could have used that to, like, here's the thing. He lost Drew at this Tribal Council. That wasn't his intended outcome, and he was on the wrong side of the votes. So as a juror, I might see that as like, well, you didn't have to play the idol for yourself ever, but there was an opportunity for you to play the idol. And that to me just proves that you didn't have much awareness of the situation that was going on.
That's fine.
Yeah, it all has to do with how you're perceived, of course, and I think that was what a lot of people argue with, like Xander, where Xander, I think that he had a sort of misunderstanding of how he was being perceived out there
Yes.
versus, how he felt like he could pitch himself in the end. You have to know how you're being perceived.
Well, then we get a blindside, which was Ollie. I mean, let me just go to you. How did you? Well, what were you feeling when the votes were being read, and you realized that the next vote was going to be Drew's?
Speak up, Ollie.
I was really sad about it. I was really, really. See, I'm crying just thinking about it. No, I wasn't that. I'm sorry.
Do you need to wash your face? Like, is
I
that?
know that's juice on my face now.
That was not water. That did not look like a clear liquid at all.
It's all right. It's good for this. It's good for the pause. It's all right.
Tell us. I mean, you were waiting for this moment? Who were we kidding?
I was waiting for this moment, and I think it was the pre-bit before. Again, we kind of mentioned the whole confessionals with Drew when he was comparing himself, him and Austin. I was just sat there going, like, it's the down. Like, you can see it. He's putting himself on this pedestal to go down. So, as a viewer, as when it comes to a TV moment. Like it was fun to watch as a viewer. I also did kind of enjoy his reaction. Like he was pissed. He was so mad.
Were you talking the jury's reaction to it?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like you could tell because he was like he didn't even want to look at everyone. So I think it like obviously like there was the part of me that was like I am happy to see him go. But that was a true blindside because he couldn't tell.
I want to
But
say this
think he said
though,
about it.
just for all the people, taking a big old stinky poop on Drew here. I love to see. Yes, it is your stinky poop, Ollie. I love a contestant that will stand up and be visibly, viscerally pissed.
Yeah.
About the
Yes.
results. I love that. And frankly, even in like exit interviews I heard, he said he didn't talk to his fellow contestants for months after the game wrapped.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he said I didn't even talk to any of my fellow contestants probably until the end of the summer.
Wow.
And it's like that feels very old school. Where in new school,
Mhm.
you finish up, you make a group chat with all the contestants, and you guys all kiki and you talk about it, you're having fun, we all got little paychecks. Drew is not happy. He's like, dude, I wanted to win, and I didn't win, and I'm pissed. And it's like, dude, good for you. I like that. It shows that he cares.
Yeah.
And I will take a Drew. Oh, here we go. I'm going back to my dark days of. I will take a Drew over a Hannah and a Sean any day of the week because he gives a crap, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah. As much as I have given Drew a lot of doo-doo this entire season, again, I give credit because I think I've sat here and said before, I know if I'd be blindsided, I'd be upset. So in that instance, I'd sit there and be like, I understand it because I'd probably be sat there going to Ponderosa being like, I hate all these people. So that I do understand. But yeah, as a viewer,
To me, it's like as long as you still respect the game of it all, then cool. But I'm with you, Phil. Like I love people feeling their feelings. We saw that with Kelly earlier this season too, and it made for a very memorable exit, which is probably if you can't win the game, is probably something that is pretty, I mean, it's still painful. You've lost out on the $1 million and title of Sole Survivor, but like in terms of like the meme quality, like it's probably pretty good to have. So there's that element. All right, we're at the end of the season. Like we have one episode left. It has been an incredible journey. I mean, just look at all of the graphics that have changed throughout our time in this short time frame. So with all of this growth and with everything that we know now, we have our final five: Julie, Jake, Katurah, Dee, and Austin. Before we really just like lock in our final predictions, I think as a group, we should just kind of brainstorm the different outcomes that might happen based on the small group that we have now and the relationships there. For instance, I get the impression that Dee and Julie and Dee and Austin want to get to the end together. whether or not Austin and Julie see each other in their versions of their final three, I could see them moving forward together, but then it has to do with who has immunity, right? So I'm curious if we could just brainstorm for a little bit. Where are we going now?
Phil.
And it's not the sanctuary.
I mean, look, I don't want to do a true cut to the chase here. I just want to be like, hey, let's give our final threes, because I there are really just a few options that I really see in terms of like a true outcome here. I only see a few things that feel real and truly possible. We can live in fantasy land. We can talk about how certain people might end up there. I think that there are actually only a few sort of true to form options of how we're going to get there. Now I'm going to seem like an idiot. This episode, you guys can go ahead and write in the comments that I'm an idiot. But it's okay. There's my @. Go ahead and DM me. Let me know I'm an idiot. But I really do feel like there's just a few options of what we're going to get next episode. And so, you know, I don't want to ruin the fun. I want to hear what you all think first.
I mean, I'm going to say I'm even nervous to really lock anything in because I'm unsure. What we do know for a fact is that at least one of the remaining Reba will make it, whether or not someone joins. So maybe let's do it that way. Out of the remaining Reba, who do we see taking at least that one spot? And yes, I know 2 of them can make it, possibly 3 of them can make it. But who at this point is most likely to make it to final 3?
Austin.
Okay. Oh, that's
I think Austin.
Why?
I think this again goes to kind of my head of who I think could make like the final 3 that I see in my head. I just think that Austin now potentially has a couple more avenues than he might think. And I think if he realizes that going into final 5, I think he'll be able to make his way there. That's my take.
I could see that. We saw in the preview that it seems like people are, I forget who exactly it was. I should have checked it before we started the live stream, but it seems like there's a couple of players who were talking about now's the time to blindside D.
That would be Julian Katora.
Julian Katora, which is interesting because I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine Julie taking that chance and blindsiding D. Yeah,
see, now I'm sweating. I'm like, I started off, I said that, I was like, there's only a second. I sit here and I think, like, man, it's tough to really say. This is sort of like where I stand. If I can just keep it a buck 50 with you all, okay? I feel like we have seen certain people's winner stories, and I hate to say it, I don't think that Austin is on that short list.
No.
I also don't think that Katora is on that short list. This is just my thought. I feel like the 3 possible winners are D, Julie, or Jake. That is genuinely what I think. Do I think that it is going to be a D, Julie, Jake final 3? No.
Right.
And so I think that is the most interesting sort of thing is what final 3, like what 3 are going to get to the end. I think that I really do feel like I have it deduced to the 3 people that could possibly win out of this 5. And I unfortunately don't think that it's Austin or Katora. But who gets to the final 3 is a really interesting question. And it's like, and I think that determines the winner out of the 3 people that I believe are going to win. I think that and that's the tough part for me. And to hear you be so certain about Austin getting there is really interesting to me, Ollie, because I don't know.
I think it's in that sense of, I think if people then look at Austin's game, I think they will see like, okay, maybe it might be easier to go against Austin because there is some things that, because again, we see Jake's perception is Austin will be someone that we can spook. There's not, like, that's been mentioned twice now. So clearly there has been some sort of perception of Austin. And I feel like, again, I agree, as we've seen the episodes progress, I've seen Austin's kind of win equity go down. It could all change in this finale, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. That's just my take on it.
Who do we think is the final 3, and who do we think is winning? Let's cut to it. Let's cut to it. We've got 8 lovely viewers. Let's give them what they want to see. let's go down the line. Matthew, you're all the way to the left.
I'm really sad that I brought this up. Georgette says, if D is not the winner, ... I'm thinking it's Jake. All right, Georgette. I am also going to... How do I want to do this? Yes, Georgette, I agree. So I'm going to say that... Okay, let's break it down this way. Highest win equity for me, I'm going to say, is D, Jake, and I'm really torn between Katurah and Julie for that last remaining spot. I feel like Katura's edit has been so interesting and unique, and we talked all about how it's really heated up in these past couple of weeks in terms of strategy and gameplay. I'm gonna throw Katurah in there as win equity. In terms of final three, they compared D and Austin to Rob and Amber, which it's in my mind that makes me really overthink things. I could see both of them at the end because that comparison was already made in previous episodes. So let's go along that route. So now I only have one more spot to fill. I'm going to say the final three, this is different than my win equity list, will be D, Austin, and then just to give myself the fairest of chances, I'm going to say Jake in there as well. All right, Ollie, you're up.
Would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So this is off of what I've seen and partly of what I'd like to see. My final three would be Austin, D, Katurah, with either D or Katurah winning. Because the reason I'd say D has the best chance, but there's just something niggling at me going, don't count out Katurah just yet. Don't count her out. Phil?
Close this off.
I'm going to make the very bold claim and say if D gets to the final three, I think D is winning hands down. I don't think there's anyone that can actually compete with her in the final three. That said, this is what makes it tough because I agree with you, Matthew. I think that she is target number one for most people. I think most people know that. And so in my mind, that once again, that's the hardest part. Who is going to be in that final three? I think if D gets there, D wins. But I feel how often do we get the fallen angel at 5? It happens all the time, especially in the most recent seasons. The person who feels like the winner coming into the finale leaves at the top of the finale. So, if I have to put my sort of stake in the ground here, I'm going to say final three is D. It's D. Man, I think it's D, Austin, and Jake. I think it's D, Austin, Jake, with D winning.
This was so tough to do. I'm sort of sad that we went down this route. We're gonna be so. I don't know. I'm gonna feel sad.
Pressure?
If they did. Yeah, I'm gonna feel so much pressure. Thank you. That's the word. Listen, whatever ends up happening, I've loved this season. I really have. And I'm just excited to see how it ends. I think that last Final 5 immunity challenge is going to tell all of us exactly what we are going to need to kind of put the pieces together for the remainder of the episode. But thank you all so much for joining this episode of Got Something For You. I can't believe we only have one left. I hope that you've all been enjoying it. Make sure to put on your calendars that we will be doing our episode on Thursday of this week. We are moving it before the holidays. We're doing it on Thursday, time TBD. So make sure you press that subscribe button to get notified when we are in fact going to go live that day. And make sure that you watch the episode and then come back to our live chat to talk to Ollie, Phil, and myself about it. With that, we are going to end it here. We hope you all enjoy the finale, and we'll see you